Well, it was 2010, and I just started AutoLooks and rating cars at the end of the year. Our big end-of-the-year review was coming out, and with it was this amazing product from our home country, this brand new supercar to go up against the likes of Ferrari and Lamborghini, being built in Canada from Canadian technology from an aerospace engineer. I thought to myself, this is amazing. And as I was at the Toronto Auto Show, their public relations was there, and I chatted them up, and I asked them about the car and the sales and where things were going. And they said, as of yet, we still have not received any sales from our home country. We received ones from overseas and in the United States, but nothing in our home country. This was a homegrown supercar, and it was out to change the world. And with a base price less than Ferrari and Lamborghini's top-tier vehicles and power to go up against them, what happened? Why did HTT disappear and the plethora fade from memory? Well, today AutoLooks is going to take a look at the failed supercars and sports cars of the world and why they keep on trying. Welcome back to the AutoLooks podcast. I am your host, as always, the doctor to the automotive industry, Mr. Everett J, coming to you from our host website at autolooks.net. If you haven't been there, stop by, check it out, read some of the reviews, check out some of the ratings, and go to the Corporate Links website page. Big or small, we have them all, car companies from around the globe. And if you find any that are not on our list, send us a quick email over at email@autolooks.net, and we'll get it added to our list. We don't like to watch little car companies slip through the cracks and not be on the autolooks.net website. The AutoLooks podcast is brought to you by Ecom Entertainment Group and distributed by podbeam.com. If you'd like to get in touch with us, send us an email over at email@autolooks.net. So like I said in the beginning, failed supercars. We've all heard about them, and they've been around forever. Ever since the advent of the sports car and supercar industry of the 1960s, with the release of the Lamborghini Miura, people started looking at better designs, faster cars, lighter weight materials, and just having something amazing from their home country. This is true with most major supercar manufacturers that have tried to get off the ground. And you have to remember, even the biggest ones that we have today have tried and fought through to get where they are. Sure, Ferrari was always there since the beginning, same with Maserati, but they competed with Maserati. Maserati was there first, and then Ferrari came along. Lamborghini was only created because of a fallout between Ferruccio and Enzo. Don't say a bad comment to a tractor manufacturer. I'm sorry, but the guy's got money and can build his own car better than what you have. And then you get all these little car companies like TVR, Lotus, Singer, Rimac, Bugatti, all these supercar manufacturers just coming out of the woodwork. Bugatti was never really on top. It was never a major competition towards Ferrari and Lamborghini. Hell, they had disappeared by the time Lamborghini hit the market, but their name was so synonymous with power and racing that it was tried to be brought back in the 80s and then again in the 90s. And it really wasn't until Volkswagen got their hands on it that Bugatti really came back to life. But this is just one small story. You have to remember, Ettore Bugatti, his brother, is Rembrandt. Yes, the famous painter. Their family was full of artists and engineers. He created this piece of art. Well, so did Vector sports cars. Vector sports cars came out in the 1970s and really put America on the map with having their own supercar with American power to go up against the likes of Ferrari and Lamborghini. Hell, they were competing on the same level as De Tomaso with designs that were way ahead of their time. But unfortunately, the market was not there. Well, we shouldn't say that. The market's always been there, but unfortunately for a company like Vector, breaking through in the 1970s, right before the fallout of the economic crisis of the 1980s, you're just trying to get off the ground and the economy just collapses. So there's less people to buy your vehicles. Most people at that point in time aren't going to go out and buy something from a boutique builder they've never heard of. They want something from a car company that's tried, tested, and true. So even though Vector was kicking around before the collapse, with only one product out there, they weren't able to make it big. Vector was not able to push themselves past the forefront of the supercar industry. And this goes with a lot of major manufacturers. See, Vector was created because it wanted to bring a supercar manufacturer to the United States. The US built muscle cars cars. Come on. They pioneered the GTO for the muscle cars and the Mustang for the pony cars. They showed the world you could put a lot of power in a little vehicle. So why couldn't they do it with something that's super fast? Really, it was only up until a few years ago when Singer came out that this ever was even thought of in the United States. They've had tons of different car companies try and come through and break through the mold to showcase that the United States can build powerful vehicles and compete with the likes of Ferrari and Lamborghini. Hell, my home country of Canada has tried this multiple times. Back in 2012, I remember seeing the Democross GT1 come out. Hell, I even watched as Jay Leno reviewed the GT1. And he basically said, this is a racing car for the streets. And it comes from Canada. Like, when you think of cars, you don't think of Canada. Hell, there's a lot of countries out there you don't think of cars coming from. But if you want to put your country on the map, building production vehicles, well, hell, unless you could do something like Dacia has done, or Ssangyong was starting to do in South Korea, you're never going to make it. Hell, we all remember the Yugo. That was supposed to bring an automotive corporation to Yugoslavia. We all know where that wound up. Plus, we all know where Yugoslavia wound up. Failed. But look at Skoda. They produced tons of vehicles, but they also had to have the backing of a major automotive player to get there. Just look at Bugatti and its rebirth. They had to have Volkswagen on board to make it go. Whereas one of the most famous Italian brands that has been popping up constantly since the 1960s, Pininfarina, has built many different supercars and sports cars, and yet they appear and disappear just as quick. They're very similar to De Tomaso. De Tomaso was huge for the longest time. From the 60s all the way up until the mid-90s, they were there. But unfortunately, when the market retracts and you haven't created a halo model that people know of and remember for a long time, you can't make it. Breaking through the mold is just one part of becoming a supercar manufacturer. Steve Saleen learned this when he brought out the Saleen S7 back in the turn of the century. Yeah, back in 2000, the S7 was it. This was an amazing supercar from an American manufacturer who knew engines. Like Steve Saleen had been building Mustangs, like performance Mustangs, since the 1980s under his own name. He'd been tuning them himself since the 70s. So with all that know-how, you think that his supercar would be able to make it. Vector actually lasted longer than Saleen ever did. See, the S7 was great. It was amazing. It was even put into racing, similar to that of the Mulsanne 900. Both vehicles were put into production and put into racing. They needed to showcase that they could compete with the big dogs, similar to how Honda put the NSX up against Ferraris and Lamborghinis to prove. Hell, they even put it up against a McLaren F1 in their Grand Touring circuit in Japan to prove that the NSX can compete on every level. But the NSX had the backing of Honda Motor Corporation. Steve Saleen only had his tuning company, and by separating it out, the Saleen sports cars, his aftermarket industry wasn't able to prop him back up. Sure, sales were good for the first year or two, and people got on wait lists to get them. Hell, this is around the time that 50 Cent finally hit the market, and he even utilized an S7 in one of his music videos. Candy Apple Red, Saleen S7. So that's gotta be it. That's gotta make the Saleen S7. This is gonna put Saleen on the map for supercars. No. Yet again, Saleen did like everyone else before them. They brought out one vehicle. They eventually tried to bring out a performance variation of it based off of their dedicated racing car, their GT, but unfortunately, it was a little too late. The biggest problem a lot of these supercar manufacturers have is they have an amazing product, but unless you actually hit the ground running with everyone demanding your car behind you and then quickly follow that up with something else, you're never going to make it. Hell, W Motors, the Lykan Hypersport. Everybody knew that car, and everybody wanted it. So why is it that W Motors isn't a bigger supercar manufacturer? They brought out the Feneur so that they can actually make a production vehicle. As of now, W Motors is just into coach building select vehicles for the UAE marketplace, and that's it. They have no plans to expand past what they have done. Their reason for not being bigger is because they choose not to expand. They have a clientele, and they have very limited products. They've built themselves tons of time to build vehicles until the next one needs to come out. If you ever notice why Bugatti is so big and demands so much money, it's not because it's the world's greatest car. It's not because it's the world's most powerful car. And it's not because it's cladded with gold and platinum. No, the Bugatti commands so much because they do the same thing that the competition does. McLaren does it, Aston Martin does it, Porsche does it, Lamborghini, Ferrari, and even Lotus is now getting into it. They all released special editions and new variations of their products every year. Bugatti has essentially only ever had 3 vehicles since its rebirth. The Veyron, the Chiron, and the new Tourbillon. 3 vehicles. Now you can fight me all you want. Well, they had the Bolide, they had the Mistral, they had the Essentra. Like, these are all variations of their pre-existing vehicle. They make them look different. They put them in short supply and they command massive profit. Then they funnel those profits back into the development of a new vehicle, because you have to remember, one thing Steve Saleen didn't do with the S7 is he had no follow-up. He had the S7, and then right as sales started tanking, he decided, I want to keep this car out there. Let's keep the S7 and the Saleen name out there. We're going to add something else to it. And they added the race car version for the streets. But it was too little too late. But some of these manufacturers don't exactly disappear. On the failed supercar list, you can actually throw Shelby cars in there. And hell, even Shelby supercars into there. Because Shelby has had many different cars throughout their lifetime. We all know about the Cobra, but its follow-up did not happen until the late 90s when the Series 1 came out. Then there was the SSC Aero 8 and the SSC Tarantula. Shelby has never really produced anything on par as the original Cobra. But there was such a high demand for the Cobra that it carried them for so long. Hell, the original manufacturer of the Cobra, AC Cars, is still building that vehicle. They just updated it for the first time since its inception just this past year. But how do they do that? How does somebody like AC Cars and Morgan keep going on a product that barely changes, where somebody like Steve Saleen loses the S7? Proto Motors from South Korea becomes Urium Motors, or Spira Motors near the end. Mastrada, the pride of Mexico, comes out and disappears. Hell, the Falcon F7, essentially the rebirth of the Saleen S7, even failed to stay in the market. A lot of these car companies share one common entity. And that all comes back to the story from the beginning of this podcast. The HTT Plethora, the LC750. They put all of their money and all of their effort into this vehicle. They got it safety rated so that they could sell it even in their home market, which has one of the highest standards for safety impact zones around the world. And yet they couldn't sell it in our country. But it was not promoted in our country. HTT didn't get off their ass and go to Monaco. People really don't understand the value of going to specific car shows. Not every car show is right for every car company. HTT going to the Toronto Auto Show, oh, that's great to showcase your car to everyone who's looking for a new vehicle. But not showing up at our Concours d'Elegance, where people who actually can afford the vehicle will be, is a downfall. The Monterey, the Top Marks Monaco car show, is really the hit of the supercar world. But the funny thing is some manufacturers actually go there, get tons of sales, and still fall on their ass before they can even get these products off the ground, because they have no follow through. It's similar to that of Rivian, how they managed to think that they can get vehicles off the ground by building every single vehicle. We're going to build a truck, an SUV, and a van all in one shot. We don't even know how to produce vehicles yet. We don't even know how to run a manufacturing business, but we're going to get into bed with 3 different products in one shot. Some of these little boutique builders have spent all this time making this supercar just to display it, to drum up sales, to build it. The funny thing is when money starts pouring in and people want these cars, you haven't given them a lead time and you actually haven't fully tested your vehicle to ensure that it's tip-top shape for when you sell it to people for millions of dollars. If you want to get a good understanding of this, go back and look at DeLorean. DeLorean had to cut a lot of corners at the very end. He couldn't use every single thing that he wanted. He didn't get the engine he wanted. He didn't get the chassis he wanted. Eventually, he had to settle on whatever he could afford to get the vehicle out, because he was under contract by the Irish government and the American government to get this manufacturing plant up and running and this car out to the public. He had timelines. He pushed this amazing idea onto the world, but didn't have a car ready. And when it was finally ready, it wasn't to the scale that they originally wanted. See, the Saleen S7 hit the mark. Its major problem was there was no follow-up. See, Singer has already done that. They've already followed up with a hypercar, and they're actually considering looking at either an SUV or sedan now. They want to expand outside of the supercar territory. If you want proof that you can start a car company off with just a sports car, Tesla Motors proved it to all of us. You can get people to plunk down over $100,000 for an electric roadster from a small, tiny little company. You got to figure out how you're going to plug this thing in and power it just so you can go back and forth to work. But it's new technology, but a pre-existing design because it was using a Lotus design. The original Roadster was a Lotus. Some of these manufacturers, like I said, have spent all this time and effort building these concepts and taking them to shows and then not understanding how they're going to build these things. That's like me going to the auto show with one of my past designs and drumming up tons of sales off a paper design from tons of people. And then I get home and realize, oh shit, how am I going to build this thing? I don't know where I'm going to get all my steel from. I don't know where I'm going to supply all my electronics. Hell, I don't even know, how good of a rate I can get for tires and rims. It's the business aspect of this. Anybody can have an amazing idea. And some of these supercar manufacturers are started by people with deep pockets. They want to build their own supercar. They want to put their country on the map. It's a sign of pride. Hell, Greece is trying to do that with the SP Chaos right now. The Spark Owl from Japan, one of the fastest production cars out there right now, is putting Japan on the map for supercar manufacturing. Singer is bringing America back. So it's a sense of pride in where you come from. Joss Automotive tried to do this in Australia to keep the Australian automotive industry together. Hell, even right now, there are business people that are trying to buy out the rights to create original Holden products. They want to build a sports car manufacturer and try and build the auto industry back up in their home country. They want some pride. The HTT Plethora did that for me. It gave me pride in my home country. And Felino did that a few years later. Another car company showcasing stuff from my country. Rimac did that. Come on. Nobody ever knew that Croatia could build something amazing. Hell, whoever thought South Africa could do it? The Piranha Z1 tried to do it. The Mastrada MXT tried to do it from Mexico. Raylo Automotive from the Philippines. A supercar built in a garage and showcased to the world through social media. This was a vehicle that was going to put a country on the map, not only because it was home built, because its design was out of this world. And that's where a lot of these automotive tycoons are trying to do. They want to put their country on the map. They want to showcase to the world that they could build something great. Back in the early 2000s, that was true with Marussia. Marussia built the B1 sports car. It quickly followed it up by the B2 supercar. Their biggest problem is they decided to jump into the Formula One ring. Without any sales outside of their home country, Marussia was essentially doomed the second they signed the paper to take over a Formula One team. Oh yeah, sure, we want to get our name out there to the world. Unfortunately, they didn't have anything behind them. They had 2 sports cars and that's it. 2 great and amazing looking supercars, but that was it. Production wasn't a problem. Making these things wasn't a problem. Finances became a problem, and their home country slowly became an issue for them. Even though they had deep pockets and they were able to take over a Formula One team, they weren't able to hold on. Lotus jumped out. Same with Jaguar before it got too expensive. Hell, McLaren, we're all surprised, has managed to hang on to their Formula One team as they built their empire from supercars. In the past 20 years, McLaren is one of the only nameplates to enter the supercar ring and grow within it. It all started with the MP412C, a horribly dilapidated piece of crap. They were plagued with issues. But unlike DMC back in the day, McLaren, the MP412C, didn't have problems for a few years. And by that time, McLaren had enough money to get their next product out. And after that, a Halo product. They started small and then went large, where some of these companies try and go large and then retract. Brabham, the builder of Formula One platforms and hell, even IndyCar platforms, wants to build their own supercar. Emerson Fittipaldi tried to build his own supercar, the Fittipaldi Vision Gran Turismo. And just recently, Radford from Australia, backed by Jensen Button, just closed their doors. Building the new Radford Type 62 of a pre-existing Lotus design. This was a vehicle that should have taken the world by storm. But unfortunately, all of its hype just disappeared. A lot of these companies can push their vehicle and bring it out to the world. Social media allows you to constantly push, but when you only showcase your vehicle and then only showcase it through your own direct page and not through other people's, you're limiting yourself for more widespread development. Had Radford allowed more influencers to push this vehicle and allowed more journalists to drive it, have people test it out, bring it to the Formula One races, have Button literally drive this thing to showcase showcase the car and go to the top marks in Monaco. It might have had a kicking chance, but really in the end, money can destroy any car company out there. Some car companies and some of these supercar manufacturers are kicking around. Like we said, Bizzarini keeps propping back up. Hello, just look at Hispano Suiza. There's now 2 of them out there trying to bring back a fabled name. Bugatti is back. Praga is trying to come back. Previous names that people remember, and they want to bring them back to life. They existed at a point in time when anyone could do anything. Unfortunately now, we're at a time where anybody could build anything. Anyone with an idea could try and get their product off the ground. We can all fight through and push these cars out into the world. But unfortunately, if you can't finish the project on time, on budget, and within a high quality standard, you're not going to make it. And that's the biggest problem a lot of these manufacturers have. See, Mastrada MXT was a small little boutique sports car manufacturer from Mexico. It had everything going for it. Essentially, it was its founders that destroyed it. A bitter feud between the 2 of them destroyed that car. Vector fought for years to take down the big guys. But unfortunately, without a dealer network, without parts, and hell, at its original point in time, without the internet to help it out, Vector had a hard go. Celine entered the world with everything going for it. Hell, it even had one of the world's greatest names attached to it, similar to that of the Hanassi Venom. Hanassi keeps his name in the papers. Within every 6 months, you'll find a brand new Hanassi product out there, whether it be a new F-150, a new Raptor. For the longest time there, new variations of Vipers. Hell, now you're getting all kinds of different products from their group. So the Venom GT, even though it keeps breaking world records for the fast production vehicle, it's still not a high production vehicle, but it's still kicking around because the name keeps getting pushed in front of you. And that's one of the biggest problems a lot of these supercar manufacturers have had. Even though social media didn't exist in the 70s, in the 80s, and into the 90s, doesn't mean you couldn't get your car out there. There are many different forms of advertising and media out there to showcase your vehicle into the world. And a lot of these car companies never utilized it properly. Had they have done it, maybe, just maybe, they'd still be here. Maybe if they've had more follow through with their production. Maybe if they actually got the formula right to ensure that quality and power were all together. Or maybe if they had somebody with a little bit deeper pockets to keep the project alive. Supercar manufacturers, there's a lot of them out there that have failed. And there's a lot of reasons why they fail. But every single year, we see new ones popping up. Either rebirths of previous names or brand new car companies. Everybody is trying to play their hand at the biggest pool out there. It may not be the most extensive club and have the most amount of people in it, but it's the club with the deepest pockets and the people that are willing to spend money on something that's just being made. Your only problem is you need to keep it front and center, and you need to prove to the world that your product can run with the big dogs. In reality, in the end, why do a lot of supercar manufacturers never make it past the first year? It's the exact same reason that anybody who starts a business never makes it past the first year. You didn't know what you were getting into. Jumping into the pool 2 feet is great. But most businesses fail within their first 3 years. And supercar manufacturers are no different than anything else. But everybody wants to get in there because everybody is vying to be the next Ferrari. And everybody wants to be like McLaren, where we get in, we start growing, and then we enter the top tier of racing spectacle of the world. And now we're dominating it. Because like Ferrari always said, if my cars aren't winning at the track, I'm not selling cars out of the plant. And if I'm not selling cars out of my plant, I can't afford the cars on the track. If you want one lesson about this whole thing, I'll tell you one thing that Enzo Ferrari once said about his vehicles. He didn't give a crap about the vehicles that came out of his production plant, just as long as they could pay for the vehicles on race day, because racing is where he wanted to be. And in a sense, that's one of the keys to becoming a top-tier supercar manufacturer. So if you like this podcast, please like, share, or comment about it on any major social feed, streaming sites, or anywhere on the internet that you have found the AutoLooks podcast from. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your boss, share it with your coworkers. Throw it to the people down the street or down the hall from you. The AutoLooks podcast is here, and we're going to be talking about cars for years to come. 6 seasons, over 200 episodes, and we're still kicking it around. AutoLooks is not going anywhere. So spread the word and share it with everybody you know. All from the AutoLooks podcast and the autolooks.net website. And after that, stop by the website. Stop by AutoLooks.net. Read some of the reviews, check out some of the ratings, rate some cars, read some children's book, and go to the Corporate Links website page. Big or small, we have them all, car companies from around the globe, on the AutoLooks.net website. The AutoLooks podcast is brought to you by Ecom Entertainment Group and distributed by Podbeam.com. If you'd like to get in touch with us, send us an email over at email@autolooks.net. So for myself, Everett J., the big supercar world out there, strap yourself in for this one fun, wild ride as we race to a future of even more failed supercars.